Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, well, you got a lot going on in your life, and to begin this journey of figuring things out and where we arrived at right now, I want to begin with 4 years ago, we were trying to wrap our heads around this pandemic. How long is it going to last? How is it going to affect us? But ultimately, in this quote unquote post pandemic era, how did you survive it and how did it change you?
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, it was one of the most shocking things I had ever gone through in my life because of course we were forced into isolation. And in terms of like my profession, of course, that was a very interactive, very relationship based or is a relationship based, career. And so it was a major shift for me mentally, emotionally, physically. And though it was a shift, I am really good in isolation. Like I enjoy alone time. And so I learned a lot about myself in terms of being by myself and being in my own space. But it was a tough adjustment. So while doing that for myself, simultaneously trying to help my clients do the same, it was a very hectic time.
So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do for a living. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders. It's career day.
Okay.
One of the kids says, "Hey,
Yeah.
what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Yes. I say I am a therapist and I talk to people about their problems.
Okay. So how would you explain it to me? Any
So
other
I would say
layers?
I would say I am a clinical psychotherapist, and I work in an outpatient mental health clinic where I serve as the owner and operator. So I would give you a little more so you can have a little more context.
And I'm sure that it got pretty hardcore with the pandemic and things probably upticked.
Yes. So that's what actually made us we started in the pandemic as a private practice that collaborated with other organizations to kind of help the larger population of Baltimore. And by the end of the pandemic, we had to become an outpatient mental health clinic because we needed to be able to provide this level of services for our clients. But more importantly, our numbers had gone up. They almost had, I want to say they almost quadrupled, and we had quite a waiting list. And so we had to look at what ways we could expand.
So what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
In the third grade, I wanted to be an ice skater and a lawyer.
Okay. All right. So
Yes.
talk to me a little bit about where you were born and raised and how these seeds of helping people. I mean, this is a pretty heavy business you're in. How did this dream come to fruition? How did it all kind of evolve into who you are?
Absolutely. So I was born and raised in Pennsylvania. Most of my life was spent in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And I was raised primarily by my mom, who was a single mother up until she passed away when I was 11. She died from an aneurysm or complications around an aneurysm. And I was ultimately raised by like a myriad of family members, including like her brothers and her sisters. And so they kind of came together as a village to raise me. And in the midst of all of that, they always highlighted how important education was and how important getting a degree would be in terms of making sure that I could have a career that provided me with flexibility, but more importantly, with the ability to care for myself financially. And so, being told that for so long, I knew from a young age, I was going to college. I knew from a very young age that I was bright. I was very inquisitive as a child. I was very I was a debater, so I'm always questioning things, always asking questions. And so my family, they really allowed me to have a lot of flexibility around my dreams and my ambitions because they knew very early on that I was driven and that if I said I was going to do something, I would do it. And so um very early on, I knew that education was for me, and so from there, I just I prioritized education from when my mom passed away all the way up until high school. I ended up graduating high school, the top of my class. I was a class president, a myriad of things. I went to college on a full scholarship, outside scholarships to Hampton University. So primarily, I just knew to take education seriously, and in the midst of taking education seriously, I realized. There were a lot of different ways that people learned, and there were a lot of different ways that people felt. So, like, I would have community service where I would go, to work with youth, and I would see they would struggle with reading and struggle with comprehension. And as a result, it would make them overwhelmed and angry. And so I oftentimes tried to tie emotions and feelings to thoughts and, actions and behaviors because where I grew up, a lot of the times I seen a lot of violence, a lot of aggression. And so all in all, I didn't know at the time I wanted to be a therapist, but I was a peer counselor when I was a kid. I have been helping people for as long as I can remember. And my mother, at her core, was a helper. And so I always knew I would be in a profession where I was, helping people and advocating for people, but I thought it would be in law, and it ended up being in therapy. And so ultimately what shaped my ultimate decision to end up being a therapist is my own, you know, uh trauma, and just not being able to have access to therapy in my community, it just not being a conversation. And so I thought I'd go down that path just to see where it would take me, and here we are.
So as a highly driven dreamer, you have to have had some kind of hero or good influence in your life. Who has that been for you?
Honestly, that was my mom. Knowing that I lost her at such a young age, knowing that I'm sure she had dreams and aspirations for my life that she wanted. And just never being able to have those conversations with her. Like, I think that people like think that losing your parent as a child might be easier than losing your parent as an adult. But losing your parent as a child is hard because it's a lot of those conversations, a lot of things that you just don't know, you don't learn, and they're no longer here to tell you. And if my father is very active now, but as a child, my mom was a single mother. And so a lot of those intricacies, he just, doesn't know, like when I was born, how I felt, as how I was a baby in utero, a lot of different things. And so, for me personally, I always dub her as my hero because I would hope, that she's proud, but I've always kept her at the forefront of what I was doing. And so, yeah, she's my biggest hero.
So, speaking of inspirations, if you can meet one person alive on the planet right now that you're fascinated with or find inspirational, who would that be? Who would you love to meet and talk to?
Ooh, that's a hard one. That's a hard one. That's a hard one. I have a lot of people that I would love to meet in terms of like business and art and creativity, because I lie at the intersection of all of those things. But I'm also at my core a businesswoman, and I talk very, very um frequently about being from the ghetto. I'm a place where we've been shut out. We've been, we don't have the resources to do what it is that we ultimately need to do. And so if I had to say I would meet someone, I would probably say Jay-Z, because he's a businessman, and he too has come from poverty and has kind of navigated those things. So yeah, I would want to meet him.
So, speaking of art and music, what has swayed you? What's been a motivator for you?
A motivator for me, I'm a big reader these days. I'm a children's book author, but a lot of what I do in terms of inspiration and just finding ways to be better every day. Oftentimes I find that in the books that I read. So yeah, I'm a big nonfiction book reader.
What was the book growing up? The first book that you really read that opened the door up for you?
Ooh, so actually, there are a myriad of books. I've been a reader for some time, but one book that stood out to me because I was giving it when my mother passed away was The Chicken Soup for Kids. And I talk about how that was my therapist as a kid, because that really was how I got through the loss of her, is knowing that other kids had gone through what I had gone through. So reading their stories and reading their testimonies helped me, learn that I could navigate the loss as well. So yeah, Chicken Soup was one of my favorites.
So, what is the motivation for you every day to get up? You're doing heavy work, you're helping people, but you also have to take care of yourself and evolve as a human being. What is that combined gasoline for you that helps you drive?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, one thing that I've always recognized is that like I was different. Like even with my peers, like my aunt used to tell me growing up, "Girl, you're a better friend to them than they are to you. They're never going to be a great friend to you. You need to stop making all these friends. You need to stop. All these things. I've always been like a over giver. Like just wanting to just make people happy. And so day to day, what drives me is just checking in with myself, seeing what it is that I ultimately want to accomplish for that day. But every day, honestly, I'm just trying to get 2% better.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be a better person every single day. Just trying to feel better, be better day by day, and really just face the world with some grace. Because I feel like, a lot of people just leave that part of it out.
So you have to help clients heal their lives and in that process probably giving good advice. What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Ooh, the best advice I've ever gotten would probably to one, not make assumptions and to not take things personally.
Okay. That's good. That's really good.
Yeah.
So, of all of these things that you've had to overcome and evolve and become in your life, there's a lot that has gone into this. What are you the proudest of?
Hmm. Ooh, that's a good one. I would say I'm probably proudest of being an entrepreneur, just being an entrepreneur, being a self-sustaining, independent entrepreneur for the last 7 years and having built a company that, will help thousands, I think is what I'm most proud of.
So we get off this call, you can get into a time machine and go back in time and see one event in human history, or you can go into the future and see what things look like. Where are you going?
I'm going to the future.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to the future. I want to see what they have for us. I want to see what the next generation has for us. I have hope.
When I was a kid, they used to have this thing called Weekly Reader. And I remember they used to have these really fascinating things where the idea of FaceTime at that point in the 80s was like, wow, we can see each other. But then they were talking about we're not going to have any water. We're not going to have this. We're not going to have that. It's like, it's so weird because I feel like we're in a space age movie right now with
Yes.
everything that's happening. It's weird,
Yes.
you know?
Self-driving cars is just the whole thing.
The whole thing's weird. So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Hmm. My perception of me is a very graceful, giving, humble individual. I think that people perceive me as like a very confident, very, know all the things. And actually, no, I'm not. I'm very humble and very much so trying to unlearn and relearn every day.
So what do you miss the most about Harrisburg and what do you like the best about living in Tulsa?
Ooh. That hands down my family and my community. Oh my goodness, I miss them so much in Harrisburg. Like they are such a dynamic force in my life. So yeah, I would definitely say them. And then what I like most about Tulsa are the people and the peace. Like it's very serene and quiet and oddly very nice here.
Yeah, the Midwest has that kind of level. I've met a lot of people that kind of converge in the Midwest and they're like, people are friendly and it's a different vibe. It's like people take time out. It's weird. And I'm so used to it. I've
It
been to
is weird.
Kansas City.
It's scary to me at times. I'm like, but
Right.
I enjoy it.
Yeah, it's like, what are you up to? What are you doing? What do you got? So if anyone wants to hire you, if they want to reach out, they want to get involved with anything that you're doing, where's the best place to go?
The best place to go is my website, which is my first and last name, sequoiahsherrill.com. You can connect with me with anything I'm doing there.
Excellent, Sequoyah. This has been wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing. Keep doing the great work.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.